Okay, so we are here in lessons in Heichaltzu, and we are in chapter 15. Where he's talking about how, even though he explained before how jealousy is something destructive, nevertheless, there's also a jealousy in Kedusha. But that's not a jealousy that revolves around Yeshus. That's a jealousy that the person is jealous of the other person's spiritual achievements. And how does it affect me? It affects me in a way that it motivates me and makes that the drive to grow, the drive to achieve, the drive to change is so much stronger. And therefore it has the advantages of jealousy, but not the disadvantages. One thing we need to mention, and that is when we were doing chapter 12 and chapter 13, and then chapter 14, all these chapters brought out the point that even a person was davening and a person was on quite a good spiritual level, a good spiritual space, he's working on his midas, and in davening he actually succeeds in developing a feeling of love for Hashem or joy of Hashem. Or the other person who succeeds in developing a feeling of mariros, a feeling that he's humbled by Hashem, which are really amazing things that a person is not only davening, but he actually is able to stimulate real, true emotion for Hashem. But nevertheless, it could be that underneath that is Yeshus, and therefore, a person should understand that when they have any kind of sort of negative attitude towards another person, that it's very likely that it's not coming from your true judgment, but it's coming from Yeshus and Sinas Chinam. There's a clip of Midian. So when you read these things, how you can really take things apart like on a microscopic level, that maybe deep down there's something there that even though you're motivated to love Hashem, but there's a certain sense of self, that I'm satisfying myself, that I have this love, and therefore it has an effect on my ego, or the person who's besimcha and is happy that he's besimcha, which means he feels good about it. That shows that I'm on a certain spiritual level. I'm besimcha, or I have humility, or whatever it may be. So in a sense, it's like you start thinking to yourself, so how am I ever going to get anywhere if everything is like I'm going to search and dig? It could be that whatever I'm doing is really not in an emissaire way. So the truth is, years ago, Hasidim really worked hard on this. Like it's brought down in the Sikhs, the Frierdiker Rebbe, there were certain Hasidim that before they came to the Rebbe, the Yechidus, to have a private audience, that the Rebbe should guide them, they didn't come until they worked on themselves for at least a year. They prepared a year in self-refinement until they can go. One chassid was 3 years. It mentions the name of another chassid that for 10 years he was embarrassed to come to the Rebbe until he really was able to transform himself internally. So this is definitely, for those generations, we're not on that level. So I just want to add that all this talk, especially the way it's here in the Maimer, is not chas v'shalom in a way like for me to judge my avodah, that therefore what I'm doing is not sort of, there's no value to it because it has yeshus in it. That's where we are. We're on that level that we are people that we are very aware of ourselves and now yeshus, and we're not on that high level like they were. So we got to do the best that we can, but certainly it should never get in the way of doing the things that we need to do. Let me explain. There's a famous story which the Rebbe repeated often that the Mittel Rebbe, when he became Rebbe, which was, of course, right after the Alter Rebbe's passing, in those days, the opposition against Hasidus was very strong and very, very serious. And it wasn't just there were people that were opposed. It was actually an organized groups of people that were planning and scheming and thinking of things that they can do to undermine the Hasidic movement because they understood it to be something which was Chas v'sholom against Yiddishkeit. So when the Alter Rebbe was nostalgic, there was a very big push from the opposition that now is the opportune time to crush the Hasidic movement. Because the Alter Rebbe they were known to be a dynamic person, and the Mittel Rebbe they thought was a softer person, that he doesn't have that dynamic leadership in him, so therefore they can succeed. And they launched a very strong campaign to try to undermine the Hasidic movement. What did the Mittel Rebbe do? He instituted two things amongst his Hasidim. One was that he doesn't allow them to engage in any kind of debates with people from the other camp. In fact, he prohibited them to even go to daven in those shuls because they're going to get involved in a debate. They should daven in a separate shul. The second thing that he did was that he charged every chassid with a responsibility that whoever comes to Lubavitch and hears a mimer from the Rebbe, on his way home, he has to, wherever he stops off on the way, he should sit down in the shul and give over the chassidus that he studied. And what did he give him? That two things. Number one, that they didn't have the opportunity to sort of persuade or convince a chassid from continuing with chassidus because they didn't allow them to get into these debates. And the second thing was that it would expose chassidus much more because every single chassid, wherever he went, would publicly give over thoughts of chassidus. And the Frierdiker Rebbe says not only they didn't succeed, but the first year that the Mittel Rebbe became Rebbe, there were 15,000 people that became Hasidim that year. So there are a number of stories of different things that happened at that time, but one of them was that there was a young man who was very articulate, very brilliant. He understood Hasidus properly, and he knew how to give it over. And wherever he traveled, wherever he went and gave over Hasidus, people were inspired, and they gathered to him, and they wanted to continue. And as a result of his things that he did, dozens of people became Chassidim. So he came to the Rebbe, to the Mittel Rebbe, and he said that he wants to stop doing what he's doing. Why? He said, because it's giving me yeshus. This is inflating my ego when I see that after I speak and after I share with people thoughts about Chassidus, they get inspired and they change and they become Chassidim. So I'd like to stop. So the Mittel Rebbe said to him in Yiddish, "Atzibel is from the Rebbe, aber Chassidus aus the Chazal." This is the quote the Rebbe always repeats. What does it mean? It means even if you turn into an onion, you continue to spread Chassidus. Why an onion? There are different versions why an onion. The Rebbe once said because an onion grows with its head in the ground, different than other vegetables. Some say because onion has a lot of klippos, a lot of shells, a lot of peels. Some say simply because an onion is bitter and people like to stay away from it. But whatever the case is, what the Mittel Rebbe said, no matter what it does to you and your yeshus, but you're accomplishing something amazing, so continue doing what you're doing. And therefore, yeshus should never get in the way, even if I feel that I'm doing something and it's not be'emes, okay, I might want to work on myself, but it should never get in the way to stop me from doing the positive thing that I'm doing and wait until I'll be at a point where I'm doing it with the purest of intention. It should never get in the way. And especially if we're talking about doing something for another person, like in this case, doing a favor to another person, Begashmias, or doing a favor to another person, Baruchnias. There's also a story with Alter Rebbe along those lines, that the Alter Rebbe, before he became the Rebbe of Chabad, he was a student of the Maggid and was rich, and he would travel to the Maggid. One time in his travel, he stopped off at an inn. the inn, and the innkeeper was an amazing person. He was a wealthy man, and he had this inn, but he didn't charge people. When people were traveling, he didn't charge them. This was his achnasas orchim, his place for guests. He didn't charge them for food. He didn't charge them for staying there overnight. Not only didn't charge them, but he provided them with everything that they needed, linen that they needed, towels that they needed. And they used to go from room to room to check with everybody if they have what they need. Personally, he would go. And when they left, he would give them money and food for the way. And naturally, the people were, very, very impressed by him, very thankful and grateful. They always express their gratitude that here they're traveling and he's providing them with everything they need, not charging them any money. So one time the Alter Rebbe was traveling through that direction, and he stopped off to stay at that inn. At night, the innkeeper knocks on his door, and he started to talk to them, and he asked them where you're traveling to, which direction you're going. He said, I'm going to Mezrich. I'm going to the Maggid in Mezrich. So obviously he realized that he's a chassid, and he's a student of the Maggid, and he respected that very much. So he said, have something personal I want to ask you. Is that okay? Yeah. He went into his room, and he told him about what he does. And he told him his dilemma. He said, I feel that people give me so many compliments, and they're so thankful, and they're so grateful, that I feel that what I'm doing is I'm not really doing with the purest of intention. I'm doing it to get all those thank yous. I'm doing it to get all the compliments. So maybe I should stop doing what I'm doing. And the way he worded it was, I'm not doing it be'emes. So the Alter Rebbe thought for a moment, then he said to him, but the people that come here and they're hungry, they become full be'emes. In other words, the people that are coming and they're tired, they have a place to lay down and rest be'emes. Those that come there are hungry, they have a place where they can eat and feel good be'emes, which means you might be wondering whether deep down you're doing it from a place of emes, but mission accomplished, you're helping people feel good, and therefore you shouldn't be stopping. So again, all these things about how much emes I have and how pure my intentions are, you know what it's relevant? It's relevant when he's talking about in the mind. If I'm looking down at another person, and if I am even verbalizing, telling the person you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong, that's when I have to think twice and realize that very possible that my looking down at them, judging them, and seeing the negativity in them comes from a place of yeshus, and therefore I shouldn't do it. But in terms of doing something positive, it doesn't matter if it comes from a place of yeshus, as long as I'm doing something positive. This person is learning, this person is giving tzedakah, this person is doing spreading chassidus, whatever you're doing, even if it's giving you this yeshus, keep at it, because the bottom line is you're doing something positive. So it should never get in the way of slowing us down in anything positive that we do.
But you do it not because the right reason. Because if it's positive, but not the right reason, still you need to do it.
I'm trying to do it for the right reasons. Deep down in my neshama, I'm surely doing it for the right reasons. There's a certain part of me that's thinking about the yeshus. So I shouldn't, we shouldn't, we believe according to Chassidus, not only Chassidus, we know that it's in the Rambam. The Rambam said that if a Jew does a mitzvah, or a dude does something which is according to Torah, even if he's forced to do it, but he really doesn't want to do it, but Pnimi is deep down, he really wants to do it. Mm. And therefore, it surely applies to us that verbally or technically, I'm doing something positive. Deep down, I have the right reasons. But somewhere consciously, what's registering is a certain feeling of yeshus. Wow, it makes me feel good. It puts me in a good place. It makes me more prominent, raises the bar. I have more of a status because of whatever good that I did. So those thoughts are there. The Yetzer Hara throws those thoughts in. but it should never get in the way. When it comes to doing something positive, we don't have to be so concerned about it. When it comes to something negative, like it says in the Maimon, putting someone down or looking with a bad eye at someone or criticizing the good that they do, that's when I should say to myself, that's not kindness. The Friedrich Rebbe once said, the Baal Shem Tov says you're supposed to learn for everything that you see. Everything that a person sees or hears is Ashgacha Pratis. So we can learn from it. So one time he said, being that he was, I guess, in the hospital by a doctor and they gave an injection. So he said, what could you learn from the injection? In those days, they didn't have disposable. So when they gave an injection, they took the needle and they had to sterilize it and they used it again. So he said that if you're going to do something, use the term, figuratively speaking, to stick someone, meaning to hurt someone in one way or another, or something negative towards someone, then you have to sterilize it. You have to be absolutely sure that you're doing it with the right intentions. So just like Begashmias, if you take a needle and you don't sterilize it before, not only you won't be helping that person, healing the person, on the contrary, you might make them more sick than they were before, because you're injecting bacteria, injecting germs. So same thing, Beruchnius. And it said, if you're going to help someone, you don't have to be so concerned that you're doing it with the purest of intention. But if you're going to shtech someone, hurt someone, then you have to be sure. This is also one of the answers given in Chumash. It says that when Hashem told Avraham Avinu that he should bring Yitzchak to the Akedah, Hashem told him to do that. And then later, what did it say in the Chumash? As he was about to do it, a malach came and the malach stopped him. So there's a story with a certain Rav that people came to him and they said to him that, the Hasidim are really against Torah. We're going to come out against them. Would you sign this document to excommunicate the Hasidim? So he refused, even though he wasn't a Hasid and he didn't approve, but he still wouldn't sign the document. And they said to him, why won't you sign it? And they mentioned the name of some great Torah scholar. And he said, this great Torah scholar is like an angel of God. And he signed the document. Why don't you sign it? So he said to them, look, when Hashem told Abraham to bring Yitzchak to the Akedah, he spoke to him directly. When Hashem wanted him not to do it, he sent an angel. Why? So he says, so the answer is, when it comes to save someone's life, you don't have to hear it from Hashem himself. An angel is good enough. When it comes to, God forbid, taking away someone's life, even an angel is not good enough. You have to hear it from Hashem himself. It was a metaphoric way of speaking, but it meant to say that when it comes to helping someone, you don't have to be that 100% sure that whatever you're doing is 100% pure. But when it comes to doing a favor to someone and helping someone, it doesn't matter. Bottom line is you're doing something positive. So I think we are up to, or on page 119. This is after they finished explaining that Rachel had jealousy and she was a tzaddikus. So definitely it wasn't something which is a negative character trait. What was that jealousy? That jealousy was of the good character traits. But why even use the term jealousy? And when explaining the Maimer, there is a certain advantage in feeling that feeling of envy or jealousy, that it brings out within a person the hidden potential. That was the point we spoke about yesterday. That every person has hidden potential, and that hidden potential intellectually, emotionally, and even physically normally doesn't come to the surface. But when I'm being challenged, being threatened, then that hidden potential rises to the surface and it comes out with all its force. So therefore, when I see someone has great qualities and it makes me feel that feeling, I wish I would have that, that person has these qualities in learning or in davening or in good character traits, being that it comes from such a place, it touches me in a very deep place, and it brings out these hidden potential. It comes to the surface. In the negative, it also goes to a very deep place, and that's why people, because of jealousy, could do the worst things in the world. In fact, we have an example in the Chumash, and this must be such an important thing that it's one of the first lessons in the entire Torah. Cain and Hevel. They had two brothers, and one brother, he was the first one to commit murder. He killed his brother. He murdered his brother. Why did he murder his brother? So it says in Rashi, he was jealous. They both brought a carbon. His brother's carbon was accepted by Hashem. His carbon was not. And there was a reason for it, obviously, because he brought his carbon in a better way, and he brought his carbon in a way which was inferior to other carbon. He didn't do the right intention. So therefore, his brother's carbon was accepted. But the fact that his brother was accepted is not made him jealous. And what did he do? He killed him. So he should be out of the way, not to feel jealous. So you see that jealousy also touches a person in a very deep place, and they can do the worst things in order to not be jealous of another person, not to feel that they're inferior to someone else. If the other person is ahead of them, on top of them, and so on. But in Kedusha, it also goes to a deep place and brings out something very deep. And what is it? It makes me have a stronger, more intense drive to do the things I need to do, which are positive. Now he goes, after he explained the positive, he goes back to what the negative would be. Page 119, second paragraph. The Kol Zeh, but all this that we explained, that it's positive because it brings out the hidden kaiches, that's when his motivation is, he wants the good qualities. He wants the fear of Hashem. He wants the Torah study. He wants the good character traits. But if it's not because he wants to be on a level where he's pure and he's more has more piety, and that's why he's envious of the other person, like Rachel. He's just jealous for the fact that that person is Eimed b'mayla madregazu, is on this high level. Like we said before, the person is superior to him, or at least the person has a certain prominence which takes away from his sort of shining light. And that's why he ends up hating him. This is something very severe, very difficult, and a very difficult chisar, or character trait, because this is coming from Yeshus, like you explained before. Page 120. In fact, we see that who does he feel this hate towards? Someone else, which is someone who does serve Hashem, someone who stands at a certain level in his service of Hashem. When it comes to other people, in fact, simple people, he doesn't have that feeling against them. In fact, we see who is he close to, who does he interact with, who does he show kinship to, to simple people. And a person could be deluding himself, and fooling himself, and say, he would think, wow, I'm a humble person. Look, other people, it's below their dignity to associate with this person or that person because they're simple, they're not educated, but I will associate with these uneducated, simple people. So he might delude himself thinking, this is my humility. But the truth is just the opposite. It's because of his yeshus that he's associating with these simple people. How does that make sense? Because he considers himself one of those that are over the Havaya, that he is a real Ovid, he serves Hashem, he's a person who works on his midos and self-refinement. That's why the people that he has resentment towards them or hates them are people that have a certain maila, they have qualities in terms of serving Hashem. And that's something which challenges his yeshus. It takes away from his yeshus because like this, he thinks, I'm the guy with all the quality. Now there's another guy that has the quality, so it's no big deal about me. The more people there are out there that are doing the same thing as me, I'm less unique. But when you're coming to the simple people, they're not on any high level. These are the people he loves because they don't challenge his yeshus. You remember, I mentioned this briefly, that Pesach, we go to search for chametz with a candle. You got to look in the cracks and the crevices. So I think he's going to bring that in the Maimer a little bit later. That's one of the things. And here we see an example that chametz we know is yeshus because chametz is dough rises. So this is an example of that. You have to search and see what I'm doing. Is this because I'm being humble, or maybe just the opposite? This is because of my yeshus. Now it could be the reason why I'm associating with people that are simple is because I have humility. It's possible, but I have to look into it and see, especially if I feel that these simple people I love, and these other people who actually have certain milas, these are the people I don't like. Then I know that it's yeshus.
And if you like both, it's fine.
What?
If you like both,
If you like both, then it's fine. Then it means that's not coming from a place of yeshus. Or mishu gas v'yesh b'yosef. In fact, there could be even another degree of yeshus. That the reason why he loves these simple people, yochali shavasev is kavuse alei, and the reason why he loves them and he's close to them, because with them, not only they don't challenge his yeshus, actually this expands and this inflates his yeshus. Why? The simple people, they honor him, they look up to him, which means the other person who's on par with me doesn't necessarily look up to me. He's just like I am. But the simple person looks up to me and they respect me and they think I'm this great rabbi. So therefore, he enjoys interacting with them because that feeds into his yeshus. So what's the summary of this ois? Milas hakina de kedusha. That there is a mila, there is a virtue in envy when it comes to kedusha things. And Yeshus geremes sina levar mila. Yeshus, that causes a person to have a negative feeling towards dafka someone who has qualities. Yachali is ba'aval anoshim pshutim. At the same time, you can have love for others, but those people are simple people. And then he gives the reason for it because the simple people, either because they're not challenging his yeshus, and the other reason is because actually they inflate his yeshus because they look up to him and they honor him and they think that he's a man of high stature and so on and so forth. Okay, so now we're coming to the ois, which is the conclusion. No, one more. V'nei. But now he's going back to the subject in the beginning of the Maimer about sinas chinam and about midyan and so on. Called advaram and eskarim la'eu. Everything we mentioned before, yeshem begasus and bedakos. It can exist within a person in a very coarse way or in a very subtle way. Every person according to their level. In other words, just like there are different people, that's how many levels there are. Yeshus doesn't always mean, I mean, for example, we know there's a person that is called what's the word I'm looking for? Extreme Yeshus. What? Narcissist. Narcissist. If you ever see a description of a narcissist, it's extreme, 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 full of himself and obsessed with self. And as a result, is manipulating people, and it's a very, very, very destructive character trait. But that's extreme. Then there could be a person that doesn't even feel the yeshus. We're just saying maybe deep down beneath the surface is being motivated by the yeshus. These are two extremes, and then there's the gray area in the middle. So what he's saying is yeshus is not always something very coarse and loud and very pronounced. It could also be in a subtle way. And therefore, he's saying by every person, it's according to their level. Achi yocholias, in fact, it could be the dakas kokach. It could be so subtle. He doesn't even feel it himself. He's not aware of it. But it could be there in a hidden way, subconsciously. This could be behind it and causing him to act in a certain way. So the only way I could really know what's happening is I have to look at the symptoms. It's like begashmis, when a person is not feeling well. If I don't take a blood test, I don't take an MRI, and I don't do these other things, how do I know what's going on inside? The doctor starts to judge things first by the symptoms. If you're coughing, you have a rash, if you're something with your eyes, something with your throat, if it's this or that, that seems to be the symptom of this condition or that condition. So we're looking at the symptom. The symptom here is if I'm hating someone, if I keep putting people down, I always see the fault in them. I don't want to recognize their qualities. These are the symptoms. And then I start searching within myself and to realize that beneath the surface, there might be something there over this yeshus that's causing it. The person might think that all the above things which you mentioned before are not really relevant to him. But really, it could be that this person is someone that has this character trait, and he just has to search and look deeper to see that it's there and be aware of it. What can a person do if he realizes, okay, it's my yeshus? If it's so subtle and so hidden that I'm not even aware of it, so what can I do? If it's something which is I consciously feel that I'm thinking about myself and my yeshus, I can say to myself, don't think about it. This when it comes to your mind, don't let it occupy your thoughts. But if it's something which is not even in my conscious thought, it's something beneath the surface, something affecting me subconsciously, then what can I do about it? And I think the first and the most important thing to do about it is to stop doing the things which I now recognize are symptoms of that yeshus. In other words, on a practical level, I could change. That I could realize that when I have this attitude towards another person, it's not really true. It's really my yeshus that's projecting all these negative feelings, negative thoughts. And then, of course, for someone on that level, there's also something that they can do to sort of uproot the feeling of yeshus even deep inside. Inyan Guru Me'oid, and this baseless hate is particularly Garua Me'oid, a very, very negative character trait. Yosem Eza Mida Ra Prat is much worse than other character traits of Sitra Achra. So there are other character traits that are negative, but the Yeshus is the worst. Because the other character traits, it's in a detail. Prat Ein Adem of the cloud. Shein Betekev Kolkach. If it's something specific, it's not something which is all encompassing. A certain person's lazy, the negative character trait. A person is doing something else that's a negative character trait, but it's something which is a detail. The Gamali Yeserak Prat Echad also because other negative character traits are just one detail. So it could be in one area I have this fault, but in another area I'm doing fine. But when you're talking about baseless hate, Shu klal. This is not a specific detailed character trait. It's a general character trait. Hakoilo klolos sitra achra. It encompasses the sitra achra as a whole. And what is it? Period v'eschalkus. This is the character trait of division and separation. Umoka v'sibis kol amidus rois kiniskalel. This is the source of all other negative character traits that we said before. And therefore, this is so much more severe than other character traits. So the others are just one detail. It's like a person in their body. If there's something wrong with the finger, it's definitely not a good thing. Every organ in the body should be healthy. But if there's something wrong with the brain or the heart, it's much more serious because these things affect the entire body. So sinas chinam, because it's about division and based on yeshus, this is something which affects everything of klipa. And that's why it's more important to be in control of it and more important to try to get rid of it and not let it spread. But when we're dealing with something like an individual negative character trait, it's like a finger that's hurting, which is a detail. It's also not good, but it doesn't affect everything.
So it can affect everything,
Because the sin is chinam, it's coming from the yesha, so it's affecting everything. All character traits that are negative are to a certain extent coming from sinas chinam. It's coming from the yeshus, which leads to sinas chinam. Because a person has no time to help someone else. He rather use the time for himself. Why? So I like myself better than it because of yeshus. Being selfish is coming from yeshus. So if a person is not doing things like visiting someone that's sick, we're not doing things like giving tzedakah, we're not doing things like helping the chassan and kala, not doing things that would be helping another person, usually it comes down to that I'm just interested in myself, and that's yeshus. Anger, we learned about, is a very negative character trait, but what's the source of anger? Yeshus. Person's angry and goes into a rage because things are not the way I want them to be. And the more persons are yesh, the more prone they are to lose their temper. What? Everything is yeshus, right? Welcome to the club. Yeah. We all have yeshus, but that's why he's saying that this sinas chinam, which comes from yeshus, is very general and includes everything, and therefore he's going to explain that's why this is something that Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu he has to fight this war, because this is something very general and it affects everything in Kedusha. That's what he's coming to. That's why he said in the beginning of the Maimer that this is the opposition to the entire name of Shem Havaya. In other words, there's certain mitzvahs or averas that affect the Yud. There's certain mitzvahs or averas that affect the Hey. Other mitzvahs and averas affect the Vav of Hashem's name, the last Hey in Hashem's name. But Yeshus and Sinas Chinam and these things, they affect the entire name of Hashem, because that affects the whole realm of Kedusha. And that brings in the whole realm of Klipa. If everybody would learn this Maimer once a month, so we're gonna and take it to heart, there'll be peace on the globe. Okay, we'll stop here. We continue with the show tomorrow. Yeah.
נגיד נרקיסיסט הוא בן אדם שזה בעיה מולדת או שהוא יכול לשנות את עצמו?
כל מידה רע, בן אדם יכול לשנות.
כן, אבל זה לא משהו שהוא מולד.
אפילו אין שום דבר שבן אדם נולד.
הוא לא יכול לשנות?
יש בן אדם יכול שנולד עם נטייה לאיזה כיוון. לא שום מוכרח. אם הוא עובד על עצמו יכול לשנות.
אוקיי.
יש אנשים שהם נולדו עם טבע של כעס, אבל לא מוכרח שככה מוכרח להיות. יכול לעבוד על עצמו, אבל יש נטייה לזה. גם בצד השני,